it's a hard thing as a dad knowing that you messed up. And thankfully in this story, it wasn't something massive. It was just, just messed up. Growing up, I had always loved fishing. I got that from my grandfather. If there was a piece of water, I wanted to fish it. And so when I became a dad, I'd always had this idea that maybe I could pass my love of fishing on to my boys. I have 2 boys. One is 3 years old and one is a couple months old. And so on a family trip to the mountains, it was impossible not to start thinking about drawing a line between my boys and Trout. It's one of those things that you just have big dreams and you think about all the wonderful things that could come together, but then don't actually make the plans to make it happen. And so the first day we set out, my 3-year-old bouncing down the trail, my 4-month-old strapped to my wife's chest, and we just kind of walked down a mountain trail. In my head, it was like, okay, we'll find a spot to eat lunch, break out the fly rod, and show my son how to catch a trout. But of course, as you do with toddlers, there are trips, there are falls, there are wanderings, there's just no time to fish. The next day we headed out, and again with high hopes, we went to a trail that was much closer to where we were staying. And again, the idea was, okay, I'm gonna get my little boy to fish for the first time. It's going to happen. And this time, my youngest, who, again, just a couple months old, just is not having it. It's just not enjoying the heat, is not enjoying the humidity. And so we're down the trail and it's done. Again, another kind of a failure. Again, just a failed attempt. I get home and we're like, okay, so there's a stream right by the house. So I'm going to force it to make it happen. I'm going to take my little boy on the stream and we're going to catch a trout. It's going to happen. We're going to just walk out from where we're staying and make it happen. Let's do the easy thing. And it was too close to nap time. Just again, for a toddler, it was just too much. And so, turned around, went back to the house, and that was that. The next morning, and just being real, was a little bitter, annoyed. I felt like I had kind of screwed up this entire plan. Sure, I'm a dreamer, so I probably set my expectations a little too high, and that's a great way to get frustrated. But yeah, the morning light's coming through, we're having coffee, and I think it was almost the last day we were there, and it's just kind of like, oh well, maybe when my little boy's 5 or 6 or whatever, maybe I'll try. And I think this is the biggest failure of the whole thing, was I was so adamant about my plans and my hopes and my dreams, and I totally missed my little boy pushing his car back and forth, and he asked me like, hey, will you come play with me? And I set my coffee down and I said yeah, and it was just these wind-up cars, nicer wind-up cars than I'll ever drive. And he just wanted to push him back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth. That's what he wanted to do. He didn't. He didn't have any plans for catching trout. He didn't have any plans for anything else. He just wanted to push his cards with his dad. And so we did that, and it just kind of was like, oh yeah, this is this is what matters. As luck would have it, some friends who lived there were in touch with us, and they were like, hey, if you're trying to take your kids fishing, stop taking them to the mountains. There's this stocked river that's perfect for little kids. You need to go there. And again, just as a young dad, like I gotta learn. I gotta do better than I've been doing. And so, kind of rejuvenated after playing on the floor and receiving that text message, I was like, oh, yeah, let's go do this. And it was just kind of wild, because kind of with a different perspective, I went down there and, he wanted to chase butterflies and he wanted to splash in the water. But finally, we started seeing fish move and hitting the surface. And he was intrigued. He could see the fish in the water and he was like, hey, what's that all about? And so I was like, well, let's take a look, man. And so I made a couple casts, and sure enough, bam, I get a trout on the fly, and he kind of hustles over and looks and just giggles at the first fish that he had seen caught on the fly. Just thought it was so much fun. In that moment, I was like, hey, bud, do you want to help me fish? And he was like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. And so we kind of roll casted as best as a 3-year-old with a 9-foot rod can, but we kind of roll casted. And as luck would have it, roll casted right in front of where we were. Fish rose, grabbed the dry fly. He sees the eat, so he starts, laughing immediately because he sees a fish go splash, but then makes the connection that it's on the fishing rod, and so he just starts kind of laughing hysterically as we try to strip in the line, and I'm worried it's going to come off because, like, how do I explain to my 3-year-old, like, hey, we lost the fish because Dad's not good at fishing, and then we landed it. No net, no nothing, and it just kind of was a wild moment that we landed this, stocked rainbow trout, but for him it was just the coolest thing he had seen. And for me, it was kind of this wild gut punch of, like, I had been white knuckling, trying to force my expectations and dreams so hard. And once I finally let go, that's when good things happen.